Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 278 of The Team House. I'm Jack here with Dave, D back there producing somewhere. And the guest on tonight's show is Matt Stevens. Matt served as a Navy SEAL officer in a number of different SEAL teams, ended up as a squadron commander in development group, then went on to a few other assignments. And today he is the CEO of the Honor Foundation, which we'll talk about in depth. Before we jump right into it with Matt, I just want to take a moment to tell people about our Patreon. There's a link down in the description. You can subscribe and you get access to all of these episodes, video, audio, ad-free, and you support the channel. We really appreciate all you guys who have stuck with us and help us continue what we do here. So please check out the Patreon and the link below. Matt, first question, man, I want to ask you about your origin story. Tell us a little bit about like where you grew up, what your upbringing was like, and how that took you towards the Navy eventually.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. First of all, I started growing up in upstate New York, near Binghamton, New York. Was there till I was about 10, and parents split up when I was maybe 8 or 9, and then moved. I lived with my dad and my sister, and we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, in the 4th grade. So continued in Charlotte through high school. And, like everybody, there are a lot of people in our community, divorced parents, varsity athlete. I played baseball, thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player more than anything. The military doesn't run deep in my family. Had one uncle who was an aircraft mechanic in Vietnam. And then he got his education, joined the Navy as a maintenance officer, and he was in an F-14 squadron as a maintenance officer, right around when Top Gun came out, which is about a year before I graduated from high school. And so I went on one of those Tiger cruises with him, where they used to take families out. Like, it was pretty cool. You go on just for a day, pre 9/11, standing on the flight deck, watching flight ops, pretty intense as a 14, 15-year-old kid. And really, like I said, I really wanted to go play D1 baseball. In retrospect, I wasn't any good. Got no scholarship offers, and that wasn't going to happen. But along the way, a kid a couple years before me got a, at the end of the year, an award for getting an appointment to the Air Force Academy. And it just sounded really cool when they read this little thing for him. It's like, hey, this kid's getting like a $350,000 scholarship. He's going to go fly jets when he's done. And I just didn't want to do what everybody else did. And that kind of interested me. So I mailed away for Naval Academy catalogs. I graduated high school in 1987. So no internet, nothing on TV, no books about Navy SEALs, or not a lot of them. And just started digging into all the service academies just to do something different. All my buddies were going to, UNC Chapel Hill and NC State. Smart ones were going to Duke. And so I just kept digging in and looking at it and worked my ass off to get into the Naval Academy. And everybody wanted to fly in my year. But I think the year before I got there, remember the Sunday magazine, Parade magazine? It was like an insert in your Sunday paper. There was one article in there called The Toughest Men Alive. And again, this is like 1986, 1987, and it was about Navy SEALs. I'm like, holy shit, this is pretty cool. I've never heard of this before. Because up till that point, all the movies were about Green Berets, right? I'm going to put that in. All the books were about Delta Force. Just want to say that it's changed now, but so I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And I think that's, again, not a lot of people want to do that or know about it. So I think I'm going to go that route. And so I went all in when I got to the academy, and was just lucky to persevere and get a billet and then get the buds.
Is that like a atypical pathway for an officer that you can, in the Army we would say branch into, there's probably a different term for naval officers, to go straight from the academy into the SEAL pipeline?
No, that's the way it generally is in our community. I know you guys have need to be almost a captain to go SF to SFAS or anything like that. But for us, the Naval Academy gets a certain number of billets where you go straight in, and we have slots for junior officers as the assistant officer in charge of a platoon, not the platoon commander. So, your first pump, you're kind of the 2IC versus the OIC. So very typical. There are other pathways where you can go, if you get stuck on a ship or something and you want a lateral transfer, you can do that up until you're a lieutenant. And that caps out around then, an 03.
Cool. So the Navy SEAL question, you always have to ask the SEALs, was your BUDS class hard?
Yeah, it's hard for everybody. If anybody tells you it's not hard, I think they're lying, dude. I mean, I don't think anybody maxes everything. Not that I saw.
So you got to your first team in 1991. Can you tell us a little bit about what the culture was like in the SEAL teams at that time? Like what you guys were training for, what you were preparing for?
Yeah. So I went to BUDS in 91, and then I went straight there from the academy. And then we graduated in January of 92.
Okay.
And then I had to do some temporary duty out in San Diego for like 6 weeks. So I think I checked into SEAL Team 4 in March of 1992. And so this was right after Desert Storm.
Mm-hmm.
It was right after Patia Airfield and the whole Panama invasion.
Yeah.
And so me thinking hey, what do we want to do? We want to go to combat. I'm going to go to SEAL Team 4 because they were the guys on Patia Airfield doing, and at the time, the SEAL teams were regionally aligned, like the SF groups, and SEAL Team 4 was Central and South America. So I put on my wish list, SEAL Team 4, number 1, and somehow I got it. And you can never chase conflict, as you probably know, right? So
yeah.
All we did was train, advise, and assist our partner nations in the in those regions, really on basic tactics for the counter narcotics mission. But I'll tell you a funny story about the day I checked in. So,
sure.
Ensign Stevens checks into SEAL Team 4. I'm in my dress uniform. You get to we call it the main area where you go is called the quarterdeck, even at a SEAL team. And somebody has to stand watch, 24/7 watch. And I check in, and there's a petty officer, I think second or third or first class, in blues on the quarterdeck. And he had a big frogman mustache. Half of it was shaved off, and he's got grooves shaved into his eyebrows. And I'm not sure if he was bald or not, but that's the first guy I see. And I'm reporting for duty. He's like, yeah, man, you got to go down to admin. And I'm like, well, what the fuck happened to you? And, at the time, hazing was not an uncommon thing. And I think he was getting married or had a birthday, and he got hazed, and they shaved his mustache off. And to punish him for not ratting out his buddies, the command leadership put him on watch, but didn't shave his other half of the mustache or look any way presentable. It was hilarious. And that was my welcome aboard. And a few minutes later, I saw, a big bad lieutenant who had a Bronze Star. And he's like, hey, new guy, be at, this bar at 6 o'clock, you're buying beer for the CEO, the XO, and the command master chief. I'm like, okay. I didn't think anything of it. And the dude called me at my home or my apartment, at 6:02. He goes, where the fuck are you? We're here. You are showing up and buying beer. So I drove my ass to the bar and, bought the commanding officer and command master chief a couple rounds of beer. And that was day one at the team. So the culture was it was pretty wide open. Work hard, play hard, kind of thing. I mean, they were great tactically, I thought. I learned a ton there. But it was doesn't matter who you are and what rank you were, you could not escape the wrath of, the E5 mafia. In fact, a couple weeks later, it was the CO's birthday. And I remember we used to go to a place called JB's Gallery of Girls. My Virginia Beach compadres will know that. It's a super low class topless bar. and the CEO's, on a Friday afternoon, spread eagle being held down by a bunch of dudes getting smacked on his belly with a big UDT fin. So that was the culture.
When speaking of the culture, what year did you go through BUDS?
91 mostly. I graduated in early 92.
So Navy SEALs had been out for a little while, and it was kind of like the big introduction, right, of mainstream culture to the Navy SEALs. What was it like in San Diego as a young frogman to be when you're hanging out at the bars, telling girls that you're going to be a Navy SEAL? Was that a big thing for, because like Top Gun, obviously pilots would never go out anywhere without their flight jackets after that.
Yeah, well, you're assuming I go to bars and would tell people that. Number one, until you're a SEAL, it does not behoove you to ever say, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
We used to go to Miramar, after seeing the movie. We'd go to the O Club, whatever night they had, ladies' night. But, I don't think it was actually that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I don't think beyond the people like us who thought movies like that were going to be good.
Yeah.
Nobody else on the planet watched that movie because it sucked. Now, Rob Lowe's movie, Finest Hour, if you haven't checked that one out, that's a real winner.
I don't know if I've seen it. I'll have to check it out.
Any from that early '90s time frame? Any fun stories from Central or South America you'd like to share, or maybe not?
One actually interesting thing. When I got to Team 4, we were short officers at the 04 level in the community. So they put a couple extra, junior officers in there to kind of grow the pipeline. So we had a few too many officers, and some of the teams were putting 3 officers in a platoon, and the 3rd officer, like guys I went to BUDS with, would get to go to sniper school and breacher school. I didn't. They sent my XO at the time had just come from DEVGRU, and he was like, hey, there's something important with this joint operations stuff, and we're aligned with 7th Special Forces Group. So he made a bunch of us go deploy with 7th Group for I think a 3 or 4 month deployment cycle, and then he made a couple guys went to Ranger School. They actually sent me to the whole Special Forces qualification course.
Wow.
So I had to, I did not want to do it. And this was 1993. So trust me, it was like, all I want to do is get in a SEAL platoon after, getting to the team, doing SEAL tactical training and all that stuff. But it was awesome deploying with a 7th Group ODA to Ecuador, doing high altitude mountaineering. They were awesome guys. And then the day I got back, of course, we got delayed in Panama for a couple of days because the aircraft was broken. Literally, I showed up back at Fort Bragg at the time at 0100 on a Monday morning. I started the Q course at 7:30 for the next 6 months, which, again, I didn't volunteer to go. I didn't want to go. But in retrospect, having gone through with a lot of guys who were then, senior officers, battalion commanders when I deployed to Afghanistan, was like, hey, you remember me? And it was just like easy, handshake. Yeah, whatever you
That's
need.
cool.
I'll do the same for them.
So they had you go through the 18 Alpha course.
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that SEALs ever got to do that.
Not
that's
by
cool.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
not by choice. Ranger school.
I
too,
knew
isn't
that
it?
they had been sent to Ranger School as punishment, but but I didn't know that either about.
Yeah, there were a couple guys before me, and I think I was the last one to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And again, great. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the field, all the things that you guys did, but it was great learning experience.
And then you moved over to SEAL Team 8.
Yep. Yeah. So I wanted to stay operational as long as possible, right? So I did an AOIC at SEAL Team 4. I went and asked if I could go to SEAL Team 8 and do another AOIC job to extend my operational career, because a lot of guys would tell us like, hey, you're going to do 2 platoons and then you're done. And I was like, well, we'll see what we can do about that. So I went over there. I was single, no responsibility at the time. Started another platoon as an AOIC of a strike platoon. We put guys on carriers at the time, and halfway through the workup, my boss decided to get out, and I just fleeted up to be the platoon commander, which in retrospect, like doing a second AOIC was probably not the right call. I was ready, you know what I mean? It's like, he was a great guy, but it was like, oh, I would have done it this way, but I'm still an AOIC. So did a full workup, deployed to the Med in the Middle East on a carrier with a carrier air wing. And that was a lot of fun. We didn't really do anything. It was right after Bosnia. I think that the platoon I took over was on Ready 5 with the Marines during the Scott O'Grady rescue from Yugoslavia back then. But, really nothing went on. It was just presence and a lot of exercises at the time. But great experience working with the fleet, and, learned to stay off as many ships as I could.
And so when does the thought process enter? Oh, no, I'm sorry. One more thing to get to. You spent some time with the SDVs also.
Yep. Again, to extend my operational career, I wanted to go to SDVs and try the mini subs and explore the undersea world. So I went over there as a platoon commander and got a second platoon commander job. And, we did a full workup. A lot of the stuff you do with subs is done at the time was off of Puerto Rico because they have really deep water, but you got to get qualified first go to SDV school, which at the time was in San Diego. That was 3 months. Then back to the team, do a full workup with all these exercises with the sub. And then we deployed to the Med and did, again, just a lot of exercises with our partner nations, but gained a real appreciation for what clandestine truly is. I used to think that coming across a beach with like 4 Zodiacs, from 10 miles out was pretty sexy, but you can hear them 5 miles out. So, that's not clandestine. But when you can launch off the back of a submarine underwater, go into a harbor or a beach, all underwater, and you can go over the beach without even surfacing the SDV, all you see is 4 dudes or however many guys you have with 0 sound. I mean, that's clandestine. And it's hard work. Like, don't get me wrong, SDVs, they're wet, or they were wet at the time. So it could be a 8 to 10 hour dive. But yeah.
Some of the guys we've had on here have described it as being really hellacious, that you're just freezing on those on the mini sub.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, hopefully you're smart enough to dress appropriately. But you get cold even if the water's 75, 80 degrees.
Yeah.
The worst thing for me was, when we're diving all the time, my sinuses were pretty jacked up. So it was right when Camelbacks came out, I'd put a Camelback on over my dive gear or under my dive gear, suck on that on the insert in, and about halfway through a dive, I had a little Ziploc bag with 2 extra Sudafed.
Yeah.
And I'd have to take those midway through the dive and try to, open the bag up, grab them before they disintegrated, put them in my mouth, suck it down with some fresh water, just to keep my ears clear for the next couple hours. And that was, guys did it all the time. It was super boring if you weren't driving or navigating. Like if you were in the back, shove 4 dudes in the back with all your kit, 4 rucksacks, all your weapons. That was like
it's not quite like Jacques Cousteau where you're seeing dolphins and stuff like that. It's probably just pitch dark, right?
Yeah, it's pretty dark. A lot of times we put a chem light right above us, a green chem light. And of course, back then, the dudes in the back didn't have good comms. Nobody had good comms, but you'd have that chem light on basically on a wire that went to the front, and they had a chem light on. So if you pulled it twice, it means, hey, we're okay. If you pull it 5 times, you got to get to the surface now. That was kind of the extent of how good our comms were.
Soup cans, literally.
Yeah. No, it was hard work, but it was again, appreciation for the stuff we do and what it takes to succeed in the special ops community. It's guys nowadays they're doing amazing things from the SDVs. I'll tell you, funny story on that. We were doing our final workup in SDV. We were down in Puerto Rico before we deployed, and we had my platoon had a super long insert into the harbor, and then a super long extract. It was probably like 10 miles each way. And of course, on the way back to the sub, you got to figure out this rendezvous underwater kind of thing, which I won't go into, but put it like this. We were late and we tried to cut a corner. And you don't cut the corner when you're trying to link up with a,
nuclear
huge
submarine.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's at periscope depth. And ostensibly, you can see him on your little sonar. And again, this is like 1997, 98. No, this is 98, 99. They just weren't that good. And they get banged up along the way, so they don't always work great. But after like a 10-hour dive, we're coming back. We're hauling ass for us, like 6-7 knots. And we hit the side of the submarine because we cut the corners going like 6 knots, which when you're not expecting it is
A lot.
It's pretty hellacious.
Yeah.
And of course, we thought like, what? We knew we hit the submarine. The question was, can we ballast up if we need to? So my swim buddy, I was in the back with another guy, and his door was bent, so he couldn't open his door. So I opened my door, and all I see is the propeller of the submarine spinning. It was night, but the visibility was awesome in Puerto Rico, and I could just see this thing like getting
Holy
closer and
shit.
closer and closer. I'm like, we got about 5 seconds before we got to bail. Of course, I can't talk to him, but I'm starting to grab him, and then we eventually surfaced because just to check out the boat and see if we were like, they've sunk them before out there, and there's some big trenches where you don't want to be in a sinking SDV, even if you have dive gear on, because once you go below a certain depth, you're screwed up for a long time.
So were you able to eventually get that back into the dry dock on the sub?
Yeah, we had to do basically an emergency crank down where the sub comes by and kind of does like the Fulton recovery, going like 1 knot. It's not sexy like a C-130 or anything, but they hook you, and then they get the line down to a winch, and they basically just crank your ass down because you can't. There's no way to get a broken SDV onto the back of a surfaced submarine. You got to get it down, and so yeah, they winched us down, and then eventually, got us into the shelter.
I had heard that, particularly in like the mid and late 90s, that the SDV teams didn't get a lot of respect from the regular teams, and like being sent to an SDV team was, seen as, oh, you're like B team. Was that your experience? Was that actually going on, and has that changed?
I think in some cases it was. Like if you were a brand new SEAL coming out of BUDS, you generally didn't want to go to SDVs in my estimation, because they weren't going to war. Nobody,
Right.
Even if the very few things that were going on back then, there were a couple high-end things going on that nobody talked about, but you had to have been there for a while. For me, it was a decision of like, how do I extend my operational career?
Right.
So, that was, by choice for me. And a lot of second tour guys, they saw the value of it if you were really into diving. Like you get all the diving you want there. Nowadays, I don't even think they take enlisted Aurora officers straight out of BUDS, and you have to screen to go there, which is a good thing because number one, it demonstrates who wants to actually be there and work hard. And number two, they don't have to take everybody. So just because you're a SEAL doesn't mean you're a good SEAL. And they're doing some amazing work across the world that we'll never know about.
Do you think that technology has sort of made that difference, that it's enabled the SDVs, or do you think it's just the mission parameters have changed, which has allowed the SDVs to be like more, valued, I'd say?
Yeah, I think it's both, but I think over the years, a lot of super hard work. I think our officers and leaders got smarter where like, hey, nobody's going to come and hand us the golden ticket to go on this like super high speed operation. You have to demonstrate capability, earn credibility, and then build trust. And the decision makers are generally in the Pentagon or other agencies that have the authority. And I think we just got way better at working that system, and over time built up the credibility to be asked, or if you demonstrate or offer a solution to a tough problem that they may not even know about, because not even in the Navy or special ops, like most guys don't know really what a SDV can do or what a SDV platoon. So it's a lot of education in different settings with a different audience.
And now the guys have the dry sub too, so increased range and not freezing to death.
Yeah, it was always like, I think in the early 2000s, like you see like an E5 STV guy with a Legion of Merit, and you're like, how'd you get that? Like, that's normally for 06s and 07s, and super senior enlisted dudes like, I can't talk about it. You're like, oh, that's cool. I want to go there.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's like one of the capabilities that only you guys can do. Nobody else has that, and I imagine nowadays, I don't want to say it's the main effort, but I mean, if we're moving into a time of state conflict, I can see a renewed emphasis on it.
100%. Yeah, it's they're busy.
Well, and what we know about mission creep is that if like any of their successes ever become public, then pretty soon every other uniformed service special operations unit will have their own underwater delivery vehicles. They'll all want to get in on the mission.
Yeah. Well, even after being there, I realized that like most SEAL platoons and even other special mission units, like the diving is a perishable skill, and like you're not just going to do a 2-week training block and then like, hey, we got the big mish over wherever. It's going to be a very focused thing from people that dive all the time.
Right.
And really the only people that do it all the time are the SDV teams. So that's my opinion. It's not doctrine or anything like that. So
yeah.
And now we're getting to about the year 2000. Tell us about when this idea, I mean, what I'm sensing is you wanted to stay as operational as you could, as long as you could. Is that how you got the idea to go and screen for development group?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I had always wanted to go. I just had to pick number one, I don't think I was mature enough to even apply after my platoon commander job at SEAL Team 8. And I got married right after that. So I wanted to extend it, and that was the next great step. I think a lot of us want to go there, and I just super lucky, worked hard to get there, and then got selected to go through selection assessment training in 2000. Went to the boat side of it, the gray team side, but we did a combined selection and assessment with assaults and boats for most of it until we had to break off and kind of specialize. But yeah, went through that awesome process in the year 2000.
Yeah. Any funny stories from training with Green Team?
Oh, they're all funny. I mean, it's not funny when you're.
Oh, his audio cut out.
No, I hear him.
Can you hear
You
me?
hear him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, then it's just me. Go
hearing
ahead
cut
and
Sorry,
continue.
Jack's hearing cut out.
Okay.
You guys can continue. Yeah, my thing.
Yeah,
fell
I mean-
apart. Sorry about that.
Go
You
ahead.
want me to wait?
No, please go. He's not important.
Yeah. It's a very different environment. Very professional for the most part, where it's not a lot of yelling and screaming. It's like the standards are the standards, and I hope you meet them. But if you don't, see you later. There were a couple funny things that I don't think I should go into them, but it's not funny when
When it happens.
you fuck up and you're one of the big punishments we had, especially like CQB is a big thing for us, and it was you're either dragging a tire, big heavy tire, a long ways, or you're climbing a ladder up a tree that isn't fun to do with kit. That happened, quite a bit, and I can tell you that I probably will never be asked back to Gray Team to be a throttleman on an HSAC. I can tell you, everybody rotates through the 3 positions on those boats, or at least back then we did. You got the nav slot in the kind of the port seat, the middle dude's the wheelman, and then the starboard side guy is the throttleman because it's so intense. One guy has to concentrate on just keeping it straight. One guy's like throttling, and there's an art and a science to it. I found myself one night, we were going up, doing a really easy training exercise, like going up a river. And I was the throttleman on the #1 boat. So I didn't have to navigate. It was awesome. It was just like, wah, like wide open, pin them down, going 50 knots. It's glass. It's, you know, there's a big moon out. And they've told us how to like overtake a ship because there's a big wake. There's like a big cargo ship going into Norfolk Harbor. And I couldn't remember exactly what they said. It's like, come off the throttles a little bit and then gun it. You know, so you gotta get over the lip, but you don't want to like go into the face of the wake. So I did it absolutely backwards. And we were, again, lead boat. I don't even think I had my nods on. They were like flipped up and everybody's maps are not even in a waterproof thing because it was so nice. And I came off the throttles, the nose came down, and then I gunned it. And we stuffed right into the back of
The wake.
this wake on a completely calm night. And, you know, if you've been in a boat that stuffs, you have this huge green wall of water that comes over you. I almost broke my nose. I had this big hump on my nose from my nods, smashed me in the face. Everything's wet. And all we could hear when we came up was everybody in the other boats laughing at us, except my boat. They were super pissed. So, yeah. I have the.
So it sounds like it's basically like when you're speeding in a car and going over like a bump, like the braking to put the pressure on the front.
Yep.
So it's basically the same concept for you guys. It's interesting.
It is, yeah, and you know, again, you know, we all rotated through, but I wasn't ever very good at it, and like that's selection and training for the boats. Like the first couple times you go out, it looks really cool when you launch off a wave and you count like 1,000, 2, 1,000, and you're still in the air. Because when you come down, you know it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, you know, canted a little bit, then everybody gets smashed to the side. I've seen guys get really fucked up, not through anybody's fault, but just like it's a dangerous business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is all pre 9/11. So your first assignment was over to Bosnia.
Yeah, the first cool thing I got to do was go to Bosnia for a mission we had over there, and it was great. You know, first kind of real thing that we were doing. Yeah, I had a short tenure in Bosnia. We had some guys who enjoyed the bottle and shit rolls uphill, and I promptly got kicked out of Bosnia with my senior enlisted leader after about a month. So it was a low point in my career. I thought I was completely done. This was like May, June of 2001. You know, when a 2-star conventional Army guy who owns the base tells you to go home, like, get on a plane now, you dipshits. It's pretty humbling as a young guy.
Yeah.
who thinks he's pretty hot shit. But yeah, it was a pretty good lesson for me to, you know, how we are perceived matters and how we will be employed, right? If you can't earn respect and keep respect and credibility from those that you work for, even if you're just a tenant on their base and not actually working for them, it doesn't go well.
Matt, this is a discussion we've had a lot on our show about officers and what they are and are not responsible for. Like, you know, if your Joe goes out and gets drunk and makes an ass of himself on a Friday night, you know, and then the officer's getting relieved, it's like it puts a lot of pressure on officers to maybe cover things up or, you know, or whatever, but also officers have a tendency to influence culture a lot of times. So there is some responsibility, or there should be some responsibility for certain things. Like, and you suffered because of what some of your guys did. Where, for you, like, where is that line for what an officer should and shouldn't be held accountable for? And, like, when is it detrimental to hold an officer accountable for everything the guys or people under their command do?
Yeah, you're exactly right. If that wasn't the first incident from our group, and so then it becomes a pattern. And, you know, although I didn't agree with the decision, I can see where they came from, right? I'm not a fan of like, hey, Joe Schmuckatelli goes out and gets a DUI, therefore we're going to lock everybody's liberty down. Not at all. But that was kind of an operational role. It wasn't back in CONUS, and it was, our credibility as an organization was on the line. And, I 100% believe that, if you're the OIC or commander, then you have ultimate responsibility and accountability. That's why commanding officers of ships. In the Navy, maybe it's a little more draconian in the Navy when you have that kind of autonomy when you're like forward deployed and all that stuff. This wasn't that,
Right.
But still, as a commander of a small unit, it was my responsibility to influence, if not direct, people to be smart about things. And we weren't teetotalers by any stretch, but that was what happened. Had crossed the line and put some things at risk, and it was not acceptable. So I was like, yeah, roger that.
So the second part of that question then, I guess, is, you have your big army or your bigger military, like you say, like a ship or, an infantry battalion or whatever. But when you are the officer in a smaller and more mature element, how do you influence, like these E6s, E7s, without them just saying, go fuck yourself, we're adults, we can handle our own business?
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the $1 million question that everybody wants to know the secret sauce to. And I think it's number one, being tactically, technically proficient and competent, right? You don't have to be the best shooter, diver, everything, but you got to be pretty good. So you got to earn respect. And I think most guys, like, honestly know, like, hey, you're in that position, right? And they're going to do their best to also succeed. Not to make you succeed, but they want the unit to succeed, right?
Right.
And so they want you to be good at what you do, which is not generally being the number one man in a door, right? And so if you respect the expertise around you, and build camaraderie and over time earn respect, then it should sort itself out, as long as you're not a bumbling idiot. So again, where some guys get sideways is I think they try to come in and be G.I. Joe and take, like, I got to make all the tactical calls. No, you don't. Like, you have these guys who've probably been there for a decade longer than you. Like, you got to let certain things flow and then make adjustments to the flow versus being in directive. You know what I mean? Like, the guys are so good at certain units that, you got to trust. And if you don't trust other guys there, then you got to take action and hold them accountable for not performing it, which we did. So it's yeah. I mean, my opinion is, like, at the end of the day, there's got to be one dude in charge, right?
Right.
Like, this thing called warfare and how to do it's been going on for several thousand years, and generally there's one dude in charge. And like it or not, that's generally an inexperienced
Right.
officer. Maybe it's not an officer. Like, you got the squadron commander, the troop commander, and team leaders. That's kind of chain of command. But you got troop chiefs and squadron master chiefs in there too. Like, if you're not listening to those guys, you're an idiot. you know what I mean? So it's a fine balance, but yeah, there's no easy answer. It's earned respect. It's not given.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then you were in the unit when 9/11 happened. Can you tell us a little bit, if you want, about, what that experience was like, how things changed in the unit, and sort of where you ended up? Where was the next place that you touched down at?
Yeah. So I was actually briefing the commanding officer at the time of the first plane strike on a training exercise we had coming on, and the first plane hit, and I think somebody came in and said something, and the second one hit, and like, all right, this is done, let's get on the horn. And so what we thought was that we were potentially going to go, like, something needed to happen, right? Once we figured out, hey, this was a terrorist act by Al Qaeda, we're going to go find these guys, hunt them down, and kill them. and it's going to be over in about a month. So we need to fight to get on the first mission. Like 100%. That's like everybody's like, there were fist fights going on in the locker room. Like, hey, motherfuckers, we're going. It's like, nope, we're going. Like, we're on alert. Yeah, we're not on alert. So we're gonna, you got to stay on alert. There's all these like angles being. But honestly, we thought we were gonna go on this like worldwide hunting spree and just, try to do what we could to root out Al Qaeda. And it was going to be easy and done quick. Obviously, and I was lucky that I got on the first deployment, but it wasn't done quick, right? And the first one was, we were pretty kinetic, but it was, in and out, and mostly we were on the giving end. And then the guys that relieved us, we had a guy step on an anti-tank mine. And then some other guys get hurt and some things happen very quickly. And it became like, okay, this is not going to be an easy fight. This is a longer term slog. And I went back like within a year, within 9 months, I was back in theater doing other stuff. And it's like, okay, this is the new normal, like 3 months on, or 4 months on and 6 months off. And while you're off, you're training, and it elevated the seriousness of like the training trips that we took. And while you were home, really getting focused on some of the mission profiles that we had signed up for, which were pretty intense, right? I love jumping. I love free falling, or I used to. I never in a million years thought we would use free fall on an op, and we used the shit out of it. In fact, on our first real op, we had one of our troops did a halo, unmarked, unknown DZ at night with nods, and we're like, holy shit. we used to go jump all the time, but here we are. Like, we get paid for, and you better fucking pay attention to it, because it can go wrong really quick.
Can you tell us a bit more about that initial push that you guys did into Afghanistan, what that was like, what you experienced?
Yeah. So, we were with our Army sister units, and they actually did the first real operations. And I don't know if you guys, the Rangers did the big jump.
And Mullah Omar's house, right?
Well, they jumped into a dry lake bed, hunting grounds. But yeah, and we were on a ship at the time, and we watched everybody fly away and come back, and it was pretty humbling. And we were supposed to go recock for a mission the next night, and it was canceled. We're like, all right, we need to be creative then and figure out what we can do. And we all went to a land-based location and started conjuring up, like, how can we affect the situation on the ground, right? What are the rules of engagement? And, you had the big ring road, and at the time, anything coming into Kandahar with fuel or anybody with a gun going in was probably a bad guy. And so we said, hey, we can do an armed reconnaissance to the west of Kandahar. So, we didn't have vehicles there. We had boats. Again, I thought we're the maritime guys, so we brought boats on this operation to Afghanistan on the ship. And like, okay, so we went up, and we need some of these desert mobility Humvees that are in the war stock up in Kuwait. So we sent some guys up there, got a bunch of vehicles. We had ATVs with us for some reason, and figured that we could get in and do an armed reconnaissance for a couple of days with, a rat patrol kind of thing. So we did, but a Dumb-B, desert mobility Humvee, fits on a MH-47 with about 1 inch on either side, and they don't really like that, I'm told. Like, if there's not more room for it to actually squeeze by, because you're fucked if you have a hard landing or something gets cockeyed. It's just like you don't want to sit on the HLZ, like doing the 10,000 point turn. So we conjured up an op where one troop was going to free fall in, do a survey of a dry lake bed, set up a desert landing site where we bring in 2 MC-130s, land, and then my troop would roll off, go do this armed reconnaissance for as long as it took. Ended up being about 10 days. And so we had a sniper element with us. They were on ATVs, and we had my troop, which was on the 4 Humvees, and we just, found the best location to set up OPs and drop bombs on bad guys, and then, hunt for targets of opportunity. If ISR came up with any potential logger sites for bad guys. So we took advantage of that. And at the time, I thought it would be, this is like late October, I think it was November of 2001, I thought it was going to be like exercises and, okay, there's bad guys here. I got to send up a, con op. Of course, all we had at the time was like really crappy HPW, like SETCOM. You can send like just words. I remember sending up the first one. It was just like quick 5 paragraphs, who, what, where, why, and when. It was like, hey, we want to hit this target at, 2200. We're going to take 4 vehicles, and this is it. And like it was approved within 30 seconds. We're like, all right, we scratched it out in the dirt, and we went and did a classic, ambush on a target. That was the first real one. And then the snipers were doing their thing, dropping bombs on bad guys. So it was fulfilling,
Yeah.
to say the least.
How was that for you guys in terms of, I know that your training covered a lot of things and you guys tried to remain proficient across a number of fields, but out here you're out there doing desert mobility ops in vehicles, like you say, kind of the old rat patrol type of stuff.
Yep.
Probably working in larger teams than normal, I imagine, or no?
Slightly larger, but I mean, honestly, we in the mobility side of it had trained to do exactly that, just like a couple weeks prior to 9/11. And it was like, we didn't have to train, but it's like, hey, this is just fire maneuver, fire movement.
Yeah.
Bigger platforms, bigger guns, slower than us on ground. It's the same tactics you use on the water, quite frankly. And it was like, we had just done it. And so that brought some credibility to us. Like, yeah, of course we can do this. And we can, we were being sneaky. And at the time, like we didn't have any FLIR systems on vehicles or anything like that. So we took the one we had from our boat and stuck it on to a Humvee, and it worked great.
Yeah.
We had 360 rotating gimbal. Partner
Which
unit did the same thing.
Eventually became standard on the vehicles because you guys did it.
It was, so it was just like creative dudes in the troop, like, hey, fly to Kuwait and figure out how to get these vehicles from some Army logistics dude. Like, of course he had the backing of the task force behind him, but bring them back here, figure out the air, and then what do we need on those things? Like, we pulled out the windshields, pulled off the doors, we're welding like machine gun turrets to the passenger side, so I had an M60 in front of my face the whole time. It was like, awesome.
Yeah.
This is cool, Of course, it smacked me in the face a bunch, but we don't talk about that.
You mentioned this when you were talking about SDVs, about, sort of advocating for yourself and educating people. Did you find that to be the case here too, where you guys wanted to find a way to make yourselves useful? You kind of created these use cases and then sold them?
Yeah, well, there's so much work to go around at the time that it wasn't hard, but certainly there were some whisperings like, why are these guys doing this? Like
the water guys, why are they in this landlocked country?
Yeah, but we were, special mission unit, and we trained to that, and then the basic task that we trained to for other missions led and allowed themselves to be used 100% for this. So, I mean, for us, it was like, you know what SEAL stands for? It's an acronym for Sea, Air, and Land. You know what the 3 lightning bolts on a SF patch are? Sea, Air, and Land, right? And so it goes both ways. And frankly, it didn't last that long. There might have been a little more consternation between us and the Rangers.
Yeah.
Because there was always that kind of difference of opinion, right? the Rangers are the premier light infantry guys
Right.
of the Army. And they're really good. Are they the same as who we were? Like, no, the different missions, different age groups, right? But everybody has their roles. And frankly, I used to get really sick of it. And some other things happened later that I can talk about, but it was, after that, I think when I heard that kind of stuff, it's like,
Yeah,
you
whatever.
know,
Yeah.
you're a closed-minded dipshit. Go over there and, complain to somebody else because we're here to get work done.
Yeah. I mean, what I really took from what you just said is that SEALs and SF go both ways.
It's not gay if you're underway. Everyone knows that.
No, but it is interesting because really, obviously, with SEALs, you have the swimming aspect as part of the selection. With Army units, you have a lot of the land-based movements but at the end of the day, they're really the same guys. And
100%.
And their training may be focused in different arenas. And obviously the SMUs do probably get a level of training. Well, they do. They get a level of training and funding that, the Rangers and SF might not get or whatever. But they're the same guys.
Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we are all cut from the same cloth, and you might have a different colored cloth, but we are the same. And
Yeah.
that is it's pretty awesome actually when you think about the community that we come from, right? Yeah, we all want to, like, everybody has their little clique of, yeah, I'm a SEAL, right? So if given the choice, I'm probably going to hang out with SEALs, but you know what? If given the choice for me to hang out with a Ranger, SF, or somebody else in the Navy, I'm hanging out with like special ops guys, so the circle is concentric, and I have much better friends, who are in the Army than some of the teams, right? And I'm sure it's the same way going all the way. It's about the person, not what you're wearing on your sleeve or anything like that.
And go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to ask, how was it for you guys learning, because Big Army obviously controlled a lot of the battle spaces. Big Army, is used to, working up that chain of command and I know that you guys probably went to like the JRXs and things like that where you were used to that also. But how was that for you, like learning to work in like with conventional forces in those battle spaces and things like that?
It was, I think it was generally good. As long as you didn't approach it from a perspective of like, hey, I'm an operator, you're just like guarding the gate kind of thing. Like, we all have those guys in our units who are just dicks no matter what. They typically didn't get a lot done, but if you respected their mission and where they were coming from, like, hey, you know what, you just killed the mullah. I know you didn't, like, we worked for a different chain of command. We had to coordinate with the battle space owners, but we didn't have to get permission from them.
Right.
And that was a tough pill for them to swallow. So in some cases, but if you took the time to go visit them as soon as you got in country and like shake their hand and like, hey, here's who I am, this is what we're about. We'll always try to coordinate. Occasionally we might need a QRF from you guys or somebody on standby. And if, by the way, if you need anything, let me know, because might be able to get something for you. They were generally awesome to work with, in my opinion. There were a couple guys who were just so conventional that they're just like, the assholes are stand on both sides of the fence, quite frankly.
Right.
And I can understand their perspective. I couldn't agree with sometimes decisions just based on doctrine and, this is the way we do it in the Army, or by, infantry doctrine, where it's like, well, that's not the way we do it. And guess what? I'm telling you what we're doing as a courtesy, if that's what it really comes down to, but I'm not asking your permission. So not stepping on them and not trying to make their lives harder, but trying to work and come to an understanding. And generally it worked out really well like that.
And after that pump to Afghanistan, you then got sucked into some of the more like clandestine work that the unit does. What are you able to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, we just had smaller groups arrayed in different places, trying to actually develop the intelligence picture. This is early 2001, 2002, which, became a bigger thing later, and it was super important work. But, I think we all learned early on, like, hey, the big target intelligence package isn't going to be delivered to your desk with a bow on it and be like 100% accurate.
Right.
You have to actually go figure out what's going on the ground, working with other agencies. And so we were doing a lot of that kind of stuff, partnered with very small units, other government agencies, just trying to be the eyes and ears, and then reporting back up what we were seeing. So, it was great learning experience.
And then that led into working in the JSOC staff with General Miller.
Yeah. You guys see me okay?
Yeah,
Sorry.
We
Yeah,
got you.
you're freezing up a little bit. It's okay. Yeah, your signal's kind of going down a bit.
I think my kids are probably on the internet. I'll text them to get off. But yeah, I was sent to the staff. Again, one of those things that I didn't ask to do, but was told I was going to the staff for a couple of years. And it was a great learning experience. I was supposed to go to the J3 and just, be one of the main planners. But I got sucked into some stuff or at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Miller was doing, kind of on that operational preparation of the battlefield line of effort. And so worked for him he was there for a year, but stayed in that entity for about 2 years till I went back. And it was great. I mean, it was hard because I was gone probably more there than I was, well, not more, but just as much. I moved the family down to Fort Bragg, and then, certainly there were a couple blowouts where, the pager goes off and I didn't come home for 3 months. That's a real thing. But I learned a ton, gained a huge amount of respect for our partners in the Army, worked with them quite a bit as well as the great people who were on the staff. It is, again, I didn't want to be there. I never went to school. Again, I had not gone to school up till this point. So I'm hitting 14 years of, I stayed pretty operational. And, the Army officers just running circles around me in particular about hey, how do you plan something and then run it up the chain of command and speak the staff language that Army majors know how to speak, right? And then, of course, the colonels know. That was a huge learning curve. So going to the staff at JSOC actually helped with that. Okay, I gotta up my game because that's the language everybody speaks. And back to that credibility thing, if I want to have credibility in my next job and continue to get our unit employment, then you need to be able to speak that language. So learn the language and learn how they talk and still kind of work your angle into it. So it was great in that regard, but I also got a lot of good, operational time, even while on the staff working with that crew of guys and the teams we had.
Were there any of those counterterrorism alerts or anything that you're able to talk about that were interesting experiences?
I'll tell you one funny story. During the invasion of Iraq, it wasn't necessarily a blowout, but I remember I was the first guy from our office to go, and it was it wasn't on the invasion, but it was right after it. And again, our role was to do the,
Intel side.
OPE. Nobody was interested in the OPE. So I remember talking to the J3 and giving him a brief while I'm over there, a tableside brief at an undisclosed location about what I'm supposed to do. And he's the J3, and he's an 06, and I'm a 04, I think. Maybe an 03. No, I was an 04. But he's throwing the brief on the floor, and the guy hadn't probably slept in 3 months. He's got probably a whole can of Copenhagen in his mouth, and he's yelling at me while flecks of Copenhagen getting, hitting me in the eye. And he throws the entire brief on the floor. Get the fuck out of here. You're not doing any of that. You're doing this. And he completely retasked me to do something completely different, which was great. Happy to do it. Yes, sir. And called my boss back. I'm like, hey, it didn't go so well. I don't think we're doing what you want me to do, at least not for a couple weeks. Maybe you should give him a call and see but I got retasked to go do something else, which was, it was fine, but it was, it was just different priorities for different people. And so it was all pretty new at the time for what we were trying to do. And it was not well understood, not well accepted. And, that was on us to educate people. And we ultimately did. But yeah, it was a tough learning curve.
Did you see that capability grow throughout, your career and some of these assignments you had? Because, I don't know how in depth you want to get with the OPE stuff, but as I understand it, that has a lot to do with sort of like moving the puzzle pieces or moving the chess pieces into the right place to enable operations.
Yeah, I'm no expert at this. Like, trust me, I'm the wrong guy to go deep on this. But it was, we saw several commands within Naval Special Warfare stand up to do this. We saw entities within the Ranger units. We saw 4th battalions in Special Forces get stood up all to do this kind of stuff. And it was, so I think it was, and there were other units that were way better at it, doing it already on a higher level. But we were trying to kind of, bridge the gap between what's going on the battlefields and what the tactical intel is, not strategic level intel, but like how do we affect tomorrow or the next day versus the big strategic piece of China, Russia, and this and that. So it certainly it was satisfying in that regard, and I think we played a role probably by what we did wrong and the lessons learned that then kind of led to the good thinking and design of what a unit that does this at the tactical level should really look like. And so it was super interesting.
Was it challenging for you guys in the beginning as you're developing this capability? Because I imagine that in a way, like you're serving many masters, right? You've got JSOC, you've got INSCOM, you've got state, you've got all these people out there who want to have the final say, I imagine. Was that what you experienced, or is that not quite accurate?
Not at the level I was at.
Okay.
I was way lower than certainly we had battle space owners that you talked about. We had foreign partners. We had, white side soft units that we were aligned with, other agencies, but, it was generally on the ground. It was like if you were a good dude, you were just trying to do the right thing. It worked out really well.
Yeah.
There were a couple of people that showed up that, we weren't in the main bases with the green bean coffee or whatever that place was. We weren't getting massages from the ladies on Bagram Air Base or going to that Burger King. We were in austere environments where, hey, if you got like some fresh food once every so often, it was a great thing. Or if you could score a goat, so on the ground, you built tight relationships pretty quick by sharing and just being authentic.
Yeah.
But occasionally we or the other entities would send the completely wrong person there,
Yeah.
Maybe somebody who was used to the embassy job in Paris or something like that.
Yeah. But there were massages at Bagram?
There were massages at one point.
I had no idea.
It was pretty early on, I think.
Yeah.
I've
been told. I've never been there, but I've been told that around that 2004-5 time frame that there was some sort of Thai massage parlor. Yes. Friends of mine may have gone.
Yeah, I've heard about it too.
I've never heard that.
So you must have done a good job, though, with some of these assignments, even if things didn't go the way as they were planned, because your next assignment, you got to become a squadron commander in development group. That's a huge achievement.
Yeah, was lucky to have gotten there, and certainly honored to do it. But yeah, came back, and in typical fashion, I was my bosses down at the headquarters were going to give me a couple months to do some turnover in my last couple months actually there. So I was actually back at the beach, doing a turnover, like underway training.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was all jocked up. It was probably March, so the water was still pretty cold. Getting ready to head out and just to get back into it, and get a call from the headquarters like, "Hey, we need you on a plane tomorrow morning. It's leaving out of Hope. You're going to go be our LNO, our first LNO to the 1st Marine Division." I was like, "Oh, you guys don't get it. I'm going out here. I'm prepping for, taking this over." And like, "Yeah, plane's wheels up at 9 a.m. So be back." And it was like 7:00 p.m. I'm at the beach. I'm like, "Okay." So I de-jock, drive home for 4 hours, pack all my stuff, get to the airplane, and sure enough, like I get sent over to be the LNO from our headquarters to the 1st Marine Division out in Ramadi, which was, again, I didn't want to be there, but again, they're not called requests, they're called orders. But the cool thing was, like, it was General Mattis is the division commander, General Kelly, I think, was the deputy, and Dunford was the chief staff. Like, that was their leadership lineup. And Eric Smith, who's now the commandant, was the current ops officer. He'd just been shot in the leg, and he's in the jock, with his leg up, oozing blood. He wouldn't go home. So working with those guys for a couple months was actually pretty cool because, that's, it works when you're with guys like that who are true pros, and they're like, "Hey, we need a QRF. Here's the con op." And they're like, "We don't need to see the con op. Just tell us where and when to be. We got it. You got it." It's like, wow, this is great. So there was mutual respect there. But yeah, so I did that. And then, of course, I get back to the beach on July 1st, and we deployed on July 4th. So there was zero turnover, and it was straight back into it, which was fine, But it was at that time we had, there were multiple theaters now, and we were in Afghanistan. But yeah, it was great.
And this was the time, you're the squadron commander. You had told me earlier when Operation Red Wings happened, and you were the ground force commander for the squadron when that happened.
Yeah, on one of the deployments, we were over there, and again, we, in the, as you guys know, but there were multiple chains of command, right? The Whiteside guys worked for Siege SO, who worked for the 2-star or 3-star Army guy that was, the overall battle space owner. We worked for a different chain of command. So we kind of watched the planning going on for Red Wings, and they needed some helicopters. So they came over and, requested permission to use the helicopter. So I kind of watched the planning going on, but we weren't directly involved. So, we had zero skin in the game besides just, giving them advice on where not to go and what not to do, which is what they did. But so we watched the planning, and I remember, I didn't think of anything of it. And we were working nights, so we'd wake up around lunchtime. And remember the day, June 28th, 2005, we were still using pagers. The beepers went off, right before lunch. Like, "Hey, report to the jock immediately." And we muster in the jock and like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Hey, a bird has just been shot down, one of our task force assets." Like, what? Like, not tracking any of it. Like, holy shit. Like, how does that happen? And come to realize that they'd inserted the night before, they got compromised, big firefight. And this is the four-man recce team, which is a pretty light recce team. And then they had launched the QRF in the middle of the day. And that's when we kind of got notified, because although we were all one task force, the aviators were tracking what was going on, but the C2 was over at Siege SO. And so we just weren't tracking. So then it became, okay, we need to send a QRF up there. And it became a fairly interesting thing to watch for me because we could have gone right away, but after having a Siege of SO QRF launch in the middle of the day and get shot down, nobody was really keen on sending anybody else right back in there, right? Especially during the day.
Right.
And so we waited a long time till and at the time the task force and Siege of SO were both those 6s. And then you went straight to the, either CENTCOM or the conventional battle space owner. And so there was a lot of fighting and politicking going on there. We waited around for quite a while. And finally, my boss said, "Hey, how long will it take for you guys to get up there?" And we had pre-positioned an entity up closer earlier in the day. And it's like, "Wait, we can be airborne in 45 minutes." He's like, "Roger that. You're now the ground force commander. Go." And so really what we wanted to do the first night was just get a smaller element of Rangers. So we had this joint strike force entity, and it was most of my squadron and a company minus of Rangers from 275. And so I had a troop basically plus company commander with most of his company, whatever birds we needed, and pre-stage, get closer and get to the crash site. And it was pretty cool because you talk about operating with commander's intent. Like the mission brief was, they rescue any survivors, recover any remains, and kill as many bad guys as you can. Any questions? No, sir, we can work with that. So, we flew up to JBAD and sent the first guys up, got weathered out, so they had to come back. So now we're on the ground, like, what do we do? We had everybody coming out of the woodwork. We had assets along the border. Other guys had some assets. We basically said, "Hey, can anybody get there on foot?" And so, it was, where the crash site was in a valley, but to get there, like if we drove north from JBAD to Asadabad, to get to the crash site, you'd have to cross like 2 ridge lines. So it wasn't an easy traverse. And so, but we said, "Hey, we gotta figure this out, like hedge our bets." So we will send entities to walk, and then we will fly in the next night. And so they started the journey. A lot of guys had to turn back because it was so manky. A bunch of them ran out of water. And then we flew in the next day, about 5 clicks south, kind of back into the same area, but not the exact area. And we had about 60 guys, 70 guys, combined force of Rangers and SEALs. And we had brought a couple of the guys from the troop, the White Side troop, with us because they were itching to get into the fight, and we needed some more manpower. So we had about a 90-foot fast rope. I think it was high, big Sierra Nevadas, high, tall pine trees, beautiful country, but probably some people with some nerves. Like it was the highest rope I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And I just remember I was up near the cockpit talking to the pilots, and so I'm the second to last guy to come out of the bird. And I had a dog guy behind me, fast roping with his dog. And man, it just kept going and going and going, just going faster, and faster. And I remember hitting like a sack of shit and just like a little dazed, remembering, oh God, the dog guy's right behind me. So I roll it out of the way and he comes fucking plowing in. And then we had to, walk we kind of linked up with everybody, did this monster patrol up to the crash site and sent the PJs and some other guys from the Ranger entity down there to secure the crash site. We set up C2 node and started looking for survivors, and they did a really good job. And it was really significant terrain and steep, and so we probably set up our C2 node around probably 9,000 feet, and the crash site was probably 1,000 feet below us because I think the way it happened, the RPG had hit the back of it and it kind of rolled down this hill that didn't look like much on video, but when you get there, you're like, oh my God, like just getting there and back is going to be significant. But the guys got down there to the crash site while we were sending out patrols trying to find the recce team, because at the time we had no idea where they were. You know, kind of doing the forensic analysis of like, okay, a firefight happened here. We can see all the shells from both sides. Which way did they go? But couldn't really determine that. And a lot of SIGINT and other things are coming in, indicating that maybe they were over in Pakistan at the time, because several of the radios had been taken. Some people, what I think happened is people were like clicking the mic and things like that, and we weren't exactly sure where it was coming from. But you know, first order of business, get the guys. Unfortunately, there were no survivors from the helicopter. You know, all 16 of there were 8 crewmen and 8 SEALs had perished. We couldn't determine one guy because his remains were pretty burned and mangled. There was a fire down at the crash site, but got all their remains. Had to blow an HLZ so they could come in. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we had had to get resupplied. It was another issue. So we fast roped in with like minimal kit because we thought we were kind of going to get into it. And we were at 9,000 feet. So you weigh mobility versus like security.
Right.
And if you were kitted down with body armor and things like that, you would have been spent before you even got there. So most of us didn't have body armor on. In fact, some of the guys, it was pretty funny, on the rope, thought they were going to do a typical like 10-foot rope onto the, you know, a roof of a building. And when they did a 90-foot rope wearing just like flight gloves or batter's gloves, I saw a young Ranger, his entire hand was double the size the next day. And it was just a blister.
That's insane.
And but he pressed on. Another kid had a broken arm. He hit real hard. He pressed on. Nobody asked to get medevac. Not that they could have, anyways. But we got everybody out. I think all the remains out the next day, and continued looking for whoever was still alive. We didn't know if any of them were alive, of the 4 recce elements. And we didn't know where they were. So we looked and looked and looked and going on wild goose chases for several days. And then you probably read the story that a guy who was housing Marcus Luttrell walked to Asadabad and basically said, "Hey, I have this American in my home in whatever village it was." And so, that was like day 7 or 8, I forget exactly when it was, and that lined up with some other intel that we were receiving, and so then we had a pretty good idea that he's probably there, and we need to go rescue him now. And again, we don't know what's going on. We had seen goat herders, and not a lot of enemy contact, some harassing fire, things like that we would just kind of suppress with AC-130s or mortars. And so we launched a rescue, and it was a little interesting. The way it went down is we had a small team of SF guys and Afghans kind of in the area, a couple clicks away. Like, hey, this is the grid of where we need to go. Can you go do this? And they said no. Like, we have 5 Americans, 5 Afghanis who are wearing like 4 frams and pajamas, and they have 1 magazine apiece. Like, okay. And so we took a pause, sent a Ranger element up there. They went up, took charge, and led the rescue into the ground while we kind of set up a suppression of enemy air defense, kind of plan to precede the rescue helicopter that came in there. So they went in there, they secured Marcus. We knew he was there. Then we launched everybody else in to get him and did that whole suppressive fire, which was pretty cool. And they could only take out like 2 people, Marcus and like 1 other, because we wanted to bring the guy's family, that they were going to get killed. And like, sorry, can't do it, but you can walk out with our elements. So once Marcus got back and debriefed, then we started figuring out, hey, this is what happened. Here's where we were. And right away, we went out and found two of the other guys, Murphy and Danny Dietz, but we couldn't find the last of the wreck element. I think it was Matt Axelson. So we actually had been up there for 8 or 9 days, and we're supposed to go home. Not that that is going to drive anything, but we did a relief in place because we could not find the last of that 4-man wreck element. So we did a relief in place with another squadron, some other Rangers came in. And by that time we had some other conventional forces helping us out too. So they found him, I think 2 days later, and then exfilled, and we were mission complete. And yeah, it was, I'll tell you what, a couple of the guys that walked in, like from the battalion reconnaissance detachment of 275, like those guys were some tough dudes. We had a lot of people quit on that hump, including some of, you know, some people from my community. A lot of the Afghans quit, but those guys showed up, I think like 2 days after we were there, out of water, out of food, stumbling in. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are the biggest badasses on the planet. It was pretty cool. And I gained a lot of respect for, you know, again, there was always this stupid kind of rivalry, even when we were working together, like mutual respect. But, you know, after that, it's like, we truly are the same. Like, these guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Our guys are awesome.
It's also one of those moments where it was all these different units working together to repatriate Americans. You know,
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of an incredible moment in that sense.
It was, you know, there were some things early on that, like when I got to JBAT, I was, you know, I didn't wear any rank at the time, but I was only an 04. And I had some Lieutenant Colonel SF guy kind of come into my jock and tell me that he was in charge. And it's like, what? Like, why don't we just get this job done? Like, we have guys out there, like, we don't need to fight about who's in charge.
Right.
I told him to get the fuck out of my jock and go talk to his boss. And I would talk to my boss just to make sure I was clear who was in charge. Not that I cared. He came back a little while later. He's like, okay, you're in charge, but you know, those are my guys up there. I was like, come on, man. Like things like that happened early on. And we had a battle space owner come up onto the mountain to check on his guys, you know, because we had some 101st guys working with us, and they were really good soldiers. You know, he came up there like for a battlefield circulation visit, you know, in the middle of this operation, because at that point we were kind of getting resupplied, and he told his dudes to put on like the old style body armor, like the Vietnam stuff.
Yeah. Flak jackets.
I mean, it probably weighs 25 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are going to be immobile. And sure enough, the next day, like one of the guys got heat exhaustion and wanted a medevac in the middle of the day. I'm like, hey, dude, drink water. We're not medevacing you in the middle of the day. Like, you got to figure this out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why the fuck, you know, you would even put that body armor on. But, you know, he subsequently wrote some nasty articles about the C2 and, you know, the way we did ROSs and things like that. Like, just stuff. I mean, good to look at the lessons learned for sure. But, you know, like, again, this is not a conventional fight. So
Yeah.
have a little flexibility.
Yeah.
And so after this, you finally went to school. You went to Marine Staff College.
Yep. I was pretty smoked because I got to stay for a couple extra months and be the J3 of the task force after this, while all my boys went home. And it was kind of a change of command anyways. It's like, and they didn't have anybody. So I got back and you know, stayed for the J3. And then by that point I was like, I did one more pump, and then I was, you know, I think that was 8 deployments for me since 9/11, maybe 9. And I was like, I was completely smoked.
Yeah, I bet.
So I went to the
Yeah.
Command and Staff College for, what is it, 10 months or 9 months. And it was great school. It's where I learned that the Marine Corps has single-handedly won every battle that the Americans have ever fought. A Marine invented peanut butter, the cotton gin, and the internal combustion engine. I mean, they take credit for almost everything that's ever happened in American history. but it was a great school.
What is the school, and what benefit is it to officers to go to it?
Yeah, I went to the intermediate level education, for 04s. And it's what I should have done probably before I went to the staff. It's where most, like the Army has CGSC, the Navy has the Naval War College, they have 2 levels, the 04 one and then the 05, 06 one at every school. The Air Force has Maxwell Air Force Base where they send guys. And so what it is, it's where you kind of combine the art and science of theory and planning and warfare. So you do a lot of historical studies. You have small group, like 10 people conference groups. Sorry, Siri just took over. But it's a good reset to think about, what you've been doing and how you can do better. And you can get a master's out of it if you do some extra work and write a thesis. And they were very good about allowing us to pick any topic you wanted. Some guys did, the French and Indian Wars. I did pro dev, for the SEAL officer community because I had none up to that point, and I was like, it was great, but maybe sprinkling in a little bit of pro dev would have been good prior to that.
Yeah.
So that's the theory, and at the time, this is 06 to 07. We had just, I think in Iraq, we had just kind of done the surge, Marines. It was joint, but a lot of Marines in there. A lot of those guys were beat down and just they've been getting crushed and tired.
Yeah.
So it's a good break as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And from there, you served on the staff with the SEAL teams, did some time in Bahrain, and then kind of coming full circle, it sounds like boat team commander.
Yeah, I came, my final real deal was Naval Special Warfare Group 4, which is the surface maritime mobility component of Naval Special Warfare, the boat teams. So in charge of all the boat teams, and it was an awesome tour working with SWCS, the Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewmen, and doing really taking some of the like getting them into some of the stuff that SDVs were doing previously with some of the platforms they had was a lot of fun and a long time overdue.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then, you're coming up on retirement. Tell us about that experience in a run up to your retirement and then transitioning out of the military. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I was, when I was in command, we often had to do speaking engagements, and I was in Virginia Beach, and I think everybody else was out of town, so I got told to speak at something for the Honor Foundation, which is a transition institute when they started in San Diego, but they were coming to Virginia Beach. I didn't know anything about it. I asked them to come talk to me, like tell me what the deal was, what I was speaking about. And my role was to talk about the state of affairs of the community, not about anything else. So they gave this good brief. I was like, wow, that sounds too good to be true. And, I was in the middle of command, but shortly thereafter decided that I was going to transition out after my command tour. And so I decided to go through this Honor Foundation program, which was a 4-month program at the time. It's now 3 months, but it's all about transition, right? How do you, what are the tools you need? And my mindset was I'm going to audit this course and see if it's worth a shit. Because again, the brief sounded really too good to be true. And I went through it, just with a mindset of learning, because I hadn't thought about me or my family really in 25 years at that point. So, and it was game changing, right? It was a phenomenal program, and I'm happy to tell you about it, what it's morphed into. But, did a lot of introspective work on who I was as a human, what was going to make me happy, what my purpose on the planet was when I no longer am a SEAL, and then exposed me to a lot of what's out there, where I might fit in, gave me tactical tools, and so went through it, figured I wanted to be in the tech startup world. My family wanted to stay in Virginia Beach, which was fine because I had 2 kids in high school at the time. And that doesn't really align super well because I didn't have the $1 million idea, but found a really cool tech startup up in Boston, making drones, and worked for them for about 18 months. I didn't have to move up there. I just commuted a couple times a month, and it was great. Meanwhile, I stayed involved with the Honor Foundation, was on the board of directors, and about 18 months after I got out, the founder of the Honor Foundation, who'd been at it for a hard 5 years, decided he was going to move on, and I threw my name in the hat to see if I could help out, and all the good guys were gone, so they chose me.
Well, you've been there for 5 years, and it sounds like the program's going really well, so you're doing something right. Tell us about, what it has morphed into over the last 5 years. What has it changed into? What do you guys do? How can people get in touch and get involved?
Yeah, so we exist really because what DoD offers you in any service, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, it's I don't know, call it a week-long transition assistance program, Soldier for Life, whatever it is, but they all are equally mediocre, and frankly, doesn't meet the mark for the men and women in the special ops community. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but you would think that guys who've gone through selection assessment training once or twice, 3-time volunteers, would have easy transitions. But what happens sometimes is identity and purpose are so tied into what you do. I am a SEAL, I am a Green Beret, I am a Ranger, that it becomes almost harder to transition effectively out. That's why we exist. And that's what we get after. So when I came in, we had San Diego. It kind of started with Naval Special Warfare, really in San Diego. Then we grew to Virginia Beach, all covering on Naval Special Warfare. Some of the Marine Raiders from Pendleton were coming down to a San Diego class, and the Marine Raider Foundation asked us to stand up a campus in Camp Lejeune. So we did that, and that's about when I came on. The Navy SEAL Foundation really was helping us out for the Naval Special Warfare Community, and they were awesome. But I really wanted to see what we could do to give it to anybody in the special ops community who wanted it or needed it. And so you think about the joint force and where the predominance of force is, right? It's Fort Bragg, now Liberty, Fort Campbell, JBLM, Tampa, Eglin for AVSOC, a couple other places. And so we've grown. We started a virtual program first for anybody not located where one of our physical campuses are. We grew to Fort Bragg. And then the next year we grew to Eglin and Tampa, all in 1 year. Last year we expanded to JBLM and Campbell. And we have a second virtual program running now, so 8 total programs. And it's about a 3-month executive education program. We encourage folks to come about a year to 18 months before they get out, so that they can do the work themselves, right? Nobody's going to hand you a job. But if they do it that far out, then they can put the tools into practice and have a great transition, as long as they want to work at it. And so it's really grown. We will never degrade quality just to grow numbers. Like, I don't really care about that. But it's been a fun thing to do, and really great to give back to the community and continue to serve them, quite frankly, because everybody's going to have a transition at some point.
Yeah.
And so now we have those. We served about 701 people last year through this full thing. We'll probably do 800 this year. We do 1-day seminars all over the planet, and we realize that spouses play a big role in this too. So we actually started a workshop for spouses to come through as well, and it's all about communications. And so we do spouses by themselves, then we pair them with the service members and cruise them together. It's pretty cool to see that. So that's kind of where we're at now. A couple more places to go. Probably, you can figure it out where we need to grow to. Names I didn't mention, locations, but that's the goal. Be able to serve anybody in the special operations umbrella who wants our services. So
I just want to add also, you guys have a 100% rating on Charity Navigator, which if you look at a lot of the veteran organizations or veteran charities, they don't. You guys you've had like 100% transparency rating for like the last 3 years. Like if anybody listening to this wants to volunteer, or if you have a few extra bucks to throw their way, it's you guys are like a very legit and very worthy cause. And
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, we work hard to be transparent on how we're spending the money. And yeah, you can call, ask a question, check out our website, honor.org, if you want to learn more. But we operate, we kind of like the special operations. Guys like me don't teach everything. We'll go out and find the best person to teach X, Y, or Z. We pay them, we fly them in, and that's kind of the program costs. We feed the guys and gals on class night so they don't have to get a gas station burrito, but it also serves the purpose of breaking bread together.
Yeah.
And we do this over 3 months intentionally. We don't cram it into a weekend because, we could probably do it in a week, but you wouldn't retain 95% of it. And you need time to marinate on a lot of the things we throw at people. So, yeah, we do what we say we're going to do.
Yeah.
Any of the veterans out there who would like to go through your program, where can they find you? What's the process for them to get the ball rolling on enrollment into your program?
Yeah, so right now, we don't have the capacity to do everybody. So we're focused on the special ops folks, right? And if you are an operator in special operations, you can come through at any point. If you're combat support, combat service support, while transitioning under the SOCOM umbrella, then you can come through. But the website is honor.org, and you can apply right online there. You can hit our info line. Like we do look for great Americans to help us coach, to be mentors, to help with some of the other things, resume reviews and mock interviews and things like that. So we're always looking for great people who have some experience to help us out.
So I think we have some viewer questions for you before we let you go here, Matt. We got one question from JB. He asks, how often did you interact with Delta's squadron commanders? Was there any notable difference between the thought processes? Any notable differences between you and them, or same old, same old?
Yeah, we interacted all the time. And I would say they are phenomenal leaders. I think they do a great job at selecting and assessing who they're going to bring in. Like we talked about earlier, cut from the same cloth. And, at the time I was a squadron commander, I was an 04. I was the last 04 squadron commander. We have since, in our community, bumped them up to 05s, like most commanders are. And so maybe, they were a little more experienced than we were at the time. But by and large, it was a pretty great relationship.
You got anything?
Yeah, we've got one. It's from JB. Thank you very much. Just want to say thank you, Jack and Dave, for all you guys do. Oh, I guess this is about us. So
pat myself on the back.
Give us just a second here, sir. There's nobody that does what you guys do. I finally got some money to splurge on you guys. Can't wait for Dave with the 5 o'clock shadow. Thank you very much, and we'd appreciate it if you split some of that splurging between us and honor.org. If you got something to splurge, we'll always happily, gladly,
for sure, support the veteran community.
I was going to say buy some whiskey, but
and
also
the link is in the description.
Yeah, link is in the description, but honor.org is the place for that. So, thanks, JB. We really appreciate your support.
And Matt, thank you for coming on the show on a Tuesday evening and sharing your life and your experience with us, as well as letting people know about the Honor Foundation. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to put out there before we get going tonight?
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm sitting here drinking some On Your Six bourbon, which is a relatively new one. A couple of my buddies are involved with that. So
we'll have to look for that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's
oh, I love that. The dog tag. That's very cool.
Yeah. Anyways, as I kind of finish off with transition, I once heard a very astute senior officer say, hey, your last act in the military is going to be one of rejection, no matter how you leave, whether you get killed in action whether you decide to leave on your own terms or whether the military tells you to hang up your cleats, it's time to go, whether after a couple of years or after 40 years. But it's going to be one of rejection, and it's coming for everybody. So, I just encourage people who are transitioning out to do the hard introspective work, figure out what's up here before you just go chase money or a job, because you want to be happy and you deserve to be happy in the next chapter. So if it's our program, if there's lots of great ones out there that can help people, do the hard work, because this is transitioning out is probably going to be your biggest transition in life. Besides getting in, this is your next biggest one, and you got to do it well. But you got to put in the work, and you got to treat it like a combat operation, and plan it and work on it. It's not easy, but it's absolutely doable, and there's tons of opportunities out there. So, I hope everybody goes out there and crushes it.
And we will be back on Friday with war journalist Robert Young Pelton. So we'll see all you guys then. Matt, again, thank you. Check out the Honor Foundation. There's a link down in the description for you guys who are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun.
All right. Have a nice night, everyone.